Map. HOA guards barred me from my father's farm, claiming he banned me, until a stolen key, forged papers, and one buried land agreement exposed who truly owned the road beneath them. Welcome back, everyone. Before today's story begins, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. If this is your first time on the channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll always know when a new story is released. Your support means more than you know. Every like, comment, and subscription helps this channel grow and allows us to keep sharing incredible stories with viewers around the world. And before we begin, tell me this, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel. Now, grab a comfortable seat, relax, and let's dive into today's unforgettable story. Your father said you were never allowed back here. The guard spoke before I had fully lowered my window. It was 6:08 on a cold North Carolina morning, and fog lay across Caldwell Hollow Farm like smoke that had forgotten how to rise. My truck idled beneath a steel gate I had never seen before. A diesel generator rattled beside a white security booth, pushing exhaust into the damp smell of pine needles, red clay, and freshly cut grass. A new sign stood beside the road. Silver Pines Private Property. The paint was still tacky enough to shine. None of it belonged there. The guard stepped closer. He was broad through the shoulders, with a shaved head, a gray beard, and a black uniform stretched tightly across his chest. Clint Barron was stamped on the metal plate above his pocket. His right hand rested beside the holster on his belt. "Turn the truck around," he said. "This is Franklin Caldwell's farm." "I know. He's my father." "I know that too." The answer landed harder than the threat. For 3 weeks, Dad had not returned a single call. Every Sunday evening for almost 15 years, he called me at exactly 7. Sometimes he complained about feed prices. Sometimes he described the weather for 20 minutes like I had never seen rain before. But he always called. Then the calls stopped. The rehabilitation center said he was resting. Then they said he was in therapy. By the 3rd week, a woman named Marjorie Voss had begun answering questions for him. That was why I had driven 4 hours through the dark. "I'm here to see my father," I said. Clint reached through the booth window and pulled out a red sheet sealed inside a clear plastic sleeve. He held it between 2 fingers, as if it were something official enough to settle the matter. Permanent exclusion order. My full name appeared beneath the heading. Ethan Caldwell. At the bottom was a signature that looked like Dad's. Almost. I took the document. The plastic felt warm from the booth, and the sharp scent of printer toner mixed with the diesel fumes. When did he sign this? Not my concern. It becomes your concern when you block me from my family's land. Clint leaned toward the window. "This road is under HOA security control. Cross that gate, and you'll be detained for trespassing." Inside the booth, a younger guard stared at a monitor. His nameplate read Owen Pierce. He glanced at me, then quickly looked down when Clint turned. That small movement stayed with me. So did what I saw next. A brass key hung from Clint's belt. The handle was scratched along one edge, and a thin strip of green tape wrapped around the base. Dad's key. I had seen it every day growing up. He carried it in the small pocket of his jeans and touched it whenever he checked the farmhouse locks at night. It did not open the house. It opened the old seed cabinet in his office. The cabinet where he kept the family trust, boundary maps, easement agreements, and every original document connected to Caldwell Hollow Farm. My pulse slowed. Not because I was calm, because the situation had just changed. Above Clint's shoulder, a security camera blinked red beneath the booth roof. Recording. I looked down beside my front tire. An orange survey marker lay broken in the mud, its metal shaft bent, and its painted cap crushed beneath fresh gravel. I knew that marker. Dad and I had driven it into the ground when I was 17. The legal property line ran several feet beyond it, straight beneath the security booth and through the center of the steel gate. Clint followed my eyes. His hand moved closer to the holster. "You need to leave now." I folded the red order and placed it on the passenger seat. Then I looked past him at the gate, the guards, and the new HOA sign planted beside my father's road. They thought the gate was keeping me away from their property. The truth was, the gate itself was standing on mine. I did not leave Caldwell Hollow Farm. I backed my truck 50 yards down the road and parked beneath a row of rain-dark pines where Clint could still see me through the security booth window. The engine ticked as it cooled. Fog pressed against the windshield, and the red exclusion order rested on the passenger seat like something alive. 3 weeks. That was how long it had been since I heard my father's voice. Franklin Caldwell called every Sunday at 7. He had done it since I left home for college, through my first surveying job, through my divorce, and through every construction project that kept me hundreds of miles away. Sometimes the call lasted 5 minutes. Sometimes he talked until my coffee went cold. He complained about fertilizer prices, coyotes near the chicken coop, and tourists who stopped beside the road to photograph the old barn. He always ended the same way. Road's still here when you're ready to come home. Then one Sunday, he did not call. I tried the farmhouse first. Nothing. His cell went straight to voicemail. When I reached Blue Ridge Rehabilitation Center, a receptionist said he was resting after therapy. The next day, he was unavailable. The day after that, a woman introduced herself as Marjorie Voss and said all family contact needed to be coordinated through Silver Pines Estates. Dad hated Silver Pines. He called the development 200 beige houses looking for somewhere else to spread. Caldwell Hollow Farm had been in our family since 1952, when my grandfather bought the first 70 acres after 20 years repairing logging equipment. Dad expanded it one parcel at a time until it covered 214 acres of pasture, creek bottom, pine ridge, and hardwood forest. That land had its own language. The barn doors groaned before a storm. The windmill knocked twice when the bearings needed oil. The creek hissed against limestone after heavy rain. And every evening, Dad rang the brass dinner bell beside the porch. 2 hard pulls, 1 short. That meant get inside before your mother came looking. Mom's height marks still ran along the kitchen doorway. Ethan, age 8. Ethan, 11. Ethan, 15, beside the crooked line Dad drew after laughing too hard to hold the pencil straight. Her ashes were scattered beneath the red maple overlooking the western field. Dad chose the spot because the leaves turned the color of fire every October. That was the land Marjorie Voss had labeled Silver Pines private property. I picked up the exclusion order again. The paper was too clean. Dad kept documents until their corners softened and the folds turned white. He saved tractor receipts from the 80s and handwritten tax notes from years before I was born. He would not sign something this serious and leave behind one perfect copy. Then there was the signature. 6 months earlier, Dad's stroke had weakened his right hand. He could still write, but the letters leaned downward, and every line took time. The signature on the order was firm, fast, level. Someone had copied the father I remembered. They had forgotten the man recovering in rehabilitation. I spent 16 years surveying roads, drainage systems, utility corridors, and disputed boundaries. My work depended on noticing what other people ignored: a missing cap, a shifted fence, fresh gravel hiding an old line. Clint thought I had glanced at the broken marker by accident. I had not. Dad and I placed that marker together when I was 17. I remembered the iron bar vibrating through my gloves as we drove it into the clay. The legal boundary ran north of the gravel road, straight through the new booth, straight beneath the gate. I started the truck and watched Clint stand taller behind the glass. He thought I was giving up. I was only going somewhere I could see the entire property line. The white SUV appeared in my rearview mirror before I reached the county road. It moved through the fog without headlights, silent except for tires pressing across wet gravel. Clint stepped from the booth and opened the steel gate before the vehicle had fully stopped. That told me who was in control. Marjorie Voss climbed out wearing a fitted ivory coat, dark slacks, and leather boots too clean for a working farm. Her blonde hair sat perfectly above her shoulders. A silver bracelet flashed as she lifted a leather folder from the passenger seat. She walked toward my truck without hurrying. People who believe they own the room never rush into it. Ethan, she said through my open window. I hoped we could handle this privately. Her perfume reached me through the cold air. Something sweet and expensive, sharp enough to cover the diesel exhaust drifting from the generator. You're Marjorie Voss. She offered her hand. I left mine on the steering wheel. Her smile tightened. Your father warned me you might be emotional. I want to see him. I'm afraid that would be harmful right now. He's my father, and he is recovering from a serious neurological event. She opened the folder and removed a glossy photograph. Dad sat in a wheelchair beside a stone garden wall at Blue Ridge Rehabilitation Center. Marjorie stood behind him with one hand resting on his shoulder. His face looked thinner. The right side of his mouth sagged slightly, and his right arm lay across his lap like it belonged to someone else. Marjorie smiled directly at the camera. Dad stared past it. He asked Silver Pines to protect him from unnecessary stress, she said. Especially stress connected to financial pressure. The words were soft, carefully chosen. You're saying I pressured him for money? I'm saying Franklin expressed concern that you intended to force a sale. For a second, I only heard the generator. Dad and I had argued about fencing, drainage, tractors, and whether instant coffee should be legal. We had never discussed selling Caldwell Hollow Farm. Marjorie removed another page. It described me as financially unstable, confrontational, and obsessed with liquidating family assets. 3 printed emails followed, all supposedly written by Dad. One sentence claimed I had demanded my inheritance before his condition worsened. Dad would never write liquidating family assets. He would write selling the place. But lies look respectable when printed on heavy paper. Marjorie watched my face. She wanted anger. Anger would make her version believable. So I gave her silence. Behind her, Owen Pierce stood inside the booth, pretending to study a monitor. When Marjorie mentioned the sale, his shoulders stiffened. You turned his farm into HOA property, I said. Silver Pines is providing temporary oversight. You built a gate. For security. You hired armed guards. For Franklin's protection. You banned his only son. At Franklin's request. Each answer came faster than the last. Rehearsed. I looked again at the photograph. Dad had always signed with his right hand. Since the stroke, even writing his name took nearly a minute. His letters sagged toward the bottom of the page, and the pen often slipped between his fingers. The signature on the exclusion order was straight, bold, and effortless. It belonged to the man Dad had been 6 months ago, not the man in Marjorie's photograph. She followed my eyes and slid the picture back into the folder. This community has grown around the farm, Ethan. Franklin understands that private land cannot remain isolated forever. It was here before Silver Pines. Her smile returned, colder this time. Your family history does not place you above community interests. A cow called from somewhere beyond the gate. Water dripped from the metal bars onto the gravel. The camera above the booth continued blinking red. Marjorie closed the folder. Go home before you make this harder for your father. I looked at Owen. For 1 second, he met my eyes. There was fear in his expression. Not fear of me. Fear that I had noticed too much. I waited until Marjorie's SUV vanished beyond the curve before I moved. Not toward the county road. Toward the western ridge. There was an old hunting trail behind a collapsed equipment shed, narrow enough to disappear beneath mountain laurel and fallen pine branches. Dad had shown it to me when I was 9. We used it whenever spring floods swallowed the main road. The trail was steeper than I remembered. Wet leaves slid beneath my boots. Thorny vines caught my jacket, and cold water ran from the branches down the back of my neck. The farther I climbed, the quieter the gate became. Then I reached the ridge. Caldwell Hollow Farm spread beneath me. For one hopeful second, it looked unchanged. The red barn still stood beside the eastern pasture. The farmhouse chimney leaned slightly toward the maple tree. Morning fog drifted above the creek in long silver bands. Then the details came into focus. The barn had been painted dark gray. A polished wooden sign hung above its doors. Silver Pines Equestrian Club. 3 horses stood tied beside a new gravel lot, while residents in matching riding jackets gathered near a registration table. A man with a tablet collected names beneath a banner advertising private lessons and weekend trail memberships. For $100 per quarter. They were charging people to ride across my father's fields. I pulled out my phone and began recording. Near the creek, an excavator tore into the bank. Its steel bucket struck limestone with a sharp crack, then lifted a load of black earth into a growing pile. A drainage trench ran from the water towards Silver Pines. Dad had spent 30 years protecting that creek from erosion. They had redirected it in 3 weeks. Orange paint marked the oldest trees along the North Grove. Oaks, hickories, 2 black walnuts my grandfather planted after returning from Korea. Logging marks. A chainsaw rested against one trunk. My jaw tightened. Then I noticed the cameras. Small black housings had been strapped to fence posts and barn corners. One faced the farmhouse porch. Another watched the kitchen door. A third pointed toward Dad's office window. That was not maintenance. That was surveillance. I followed the tree line downhill, keeping the barn between me and the workers. The smell of fresh paint mixed with horse manure and newly cut cedar. Laughter drifted from the riding club as if none of this belonged to a real family. The farmhouse looked smaller without Dad standing near it. Mom's blue wind chime still hung beneath the porch roof. The brass dinner bell was gone. Only 2 empty bolt holes remained in the post. Someone had installed a keypad lock on Dad's office door. A white notice had been taped across the glass. Restricted management area. I stepped closer. Don't move. The voice came from behind me. I turned slowly. Owen Pierce stood near the fence, breathing hard from the climb. His hand hovered over the radio clipped to his shoulder, but he had not drawn his weapon. "You're trespassing," he said. "I was raised here." "I know." The answer changed everything. I pointed toward the office. "Where is my father?" "At Blue Ridge Rehab." "Why can't I speak to him?" Owen glanced at the camera above the porch. Its red light blinked steadily. Mrs. Voss said contact had to be supervised. "By her." His mouth tightened. "By her or someone from the board." "Why?" He looked toward the barn, where applause suddenly rose from the residents gathered around the registration table. Then he stepped closer and lowered his voice. "We were told you could never speak to Franklin alone. Not in person, not on the phone, not even for 5 minutes." The excavator struck rock again. Birds exploded from the trees. That was when I understood the real shape of it. Silver Pines was not simply using my father's land. They were isolating the only man who could tell everyone they had no right to be there. By noon, Marjorie had turned me into the criminal. 2 Buncombe County patrol cars blocked the entrance to Caldwell Hollow Farm while rain ticked against their roofs. My truck sat beside the steel gate, engine off, mud drying along the tires. A tow rig idled behind it, filling the air with diesel smoke and the hot metal smell of its winch. Marjorie stood beneath a black umbrella. Calm. Dry. Prepared. Deputy Nolan Price read the red exclusion order twice. His partner compared my license to the name printed beneath Dad's supposed signature. "This is my father's property," I said. "The security booth is built inside our boundary." Marjorie opened her leather folder. Franklin placed Silver Pines in temporary control of the property. She handed Price a 6-page document titled Protective Property Management Authorization. It carried a notarial certificate, 2 witness signatures, and a paragraph granting the HOA authority to restrict visitors, secure buildings, and remove anyone considered harmful to Dad's recovery. My name appeared throughout it. Financial coercion, aggressive conduct, attempts to force a property sale. Every lie wore a legal costume. Marjorie produced printed emails supposedly sent from Dad's account. One claimed I had threatened to liquidate the farm before medical expenses consumed my inheritance. Another said he feared I would pressure him into signing documents while he was weak. I read the first page. Dad never used the word liquidate. He would have written, sell the place. But a lie does not need to sound human when it has a stamp at the bottom. Deputy Price exhaled slowly. "Mr. Caldwell, this appears to be a civil dispute." She took his office key. "Can you prove that?" "She is preventing me from speaking to him." "Can you prove he didn't request that?" I looked toward Owen. He stood inside the booth with his eyes fixed on the security monitors. He said nothing. Marjorie's mouth curved slightly. Price handed the documents back. "Until a judge reviews this, you need to stay off the property." The words hit harder than the rain. Rachel Whitcomb met me at the county courthouse an hour later. She wore steel-framed glasses and carried a yellow legal pad already filled with notes. She specialized in rural property disputes and had the unnerving habit of becoming quieter when she was angry. We filed for an emergency restraining order, demanding access to Dad, preservation of the farm, and suspension of Silver Pines activity. We waited beneath fluorescent lights while wet shoes squeaked across the tile. 48 minutes later, the clerk returned. Denied. The judge would not override a notarized authorization without stronger evidence of fraud, incapacity, or immediate danger. The forged document had beaten the truth. When Rachel and I returned to the gate, the tow driver was already connecting chains beneath my truck. Residents stood beside the booth recording with their phones. Clint watched the winch tighten with his arms folded. Marjorie stepped close enough that only I could hear her. "Your father made his choice." The cable groaned. My rear tires lifted from the gravel. I wanted to tear the folder from her hands. I wanted to shout until every window in Silver Pines shook. Instead, I watched Clint sign the towing receipt inside the booth. Above him, the security camera blinked red. That night, Rachel and I replayed the video from my phone frame by frame. Clint turning. Dad's brass keys swinging from his belt. The camera mounted directly above him. Then Rachel paused the image. Through the booth window, one of the monitors displayed a date, a timestamp, and a small archive symbol in the corner. The system was recording everything. The document had defeated me once. So I stopped arguing about what it said. I started looking for the night they stole what they needed to create it. Martha Bellamy called at 11:41 that night. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. I saw Marjorie enter Franklin's office. Martha lived beyond the western pasture in a weathered farmhouse with green shutters and a porch that smelled of cedar smoke. She had known Dad for more than 40 years. When Rachel and I arrived, every curtain was closed, and a ceramic clock ticked loudly above the stove. The night the ambulance took him, she said. Marjorie came back after midnight. Clint was with her. She placed her phone on the kitchen table. The photograph was grainy, taken through rain-streaked glass, but the details were clear enough. Marjorie stood outside Dad's office. Clint held a flashlight. The brass key was in her hand. Rachel enlarged the image until the green tape around the key became visible. "Keep the original file," she said. "Do not edit it. Do not send it through social media." Martha nodded. At 6:20 the next morning, an envelope appeared beneath the windshield wiper of my rental truck. No name. No note. Inside was a memory card. Rachel opened it on an isolated laptop in her office. The first video showed the gate at 12:14 a.m. Marjorie's SUV entered without stopping. A second camera captured her and Clint crossing the farmyard. At 12:32, they returned carrying a gray metal document box. Owen had copied the archive, but he had done more than that. A text file on the card listed camera numbers, deleted timestamps, and the date Marjorie ordered the system reset. One line read, "Office entry footage preserved before deletion." Rachel looked at me over her glasses. "This changes everything." By noon, she had filed a renewed emergency motion supported by Martha's affidavit, the original video files, and evidence that records were being removed and destroyed. This time, the judge signed. The order required Silver Pines to preserve all data, prohibited the transfer of farm property, and allowed a supervised inspection of Dad's office. A deputy met us at the gate that afternoon. Clint did not smile when he unlocked it. The farmhouse smelled of lemon cleaner and fresh paint. Someone had emptied the desk drawers, removed the filing boxes, and replaced Dad's old lock with a keypad. The seed cabinet stood against the far wall. Green steel, rust along the bottom. Empty shelves inside. Marjorie had cleaned it out. At least, she thought she had. Dad taught me never to trust a single hiding place. Behind the lowest shelf was a narrow wooden panel held by two flat screws. I removed them with the multi-tool on my belt. A canvas package slid into my hands. The fabric smelled of dust, machine oil, and dry corn seed. Inside were the original Caldwell family trust, a durable power of attorney, 2 physician certification forms, boundary surveys, the emergency road easement, and a small black voice recorder. Rachel unfolded the trust across Dad's desk. The language was precise. If 2 physicians certified that Franklin could not temporarily manage the property, I became acting co-trustee until his recovery. Both certification forms were signed. I had not inherited the farm. I already had legal authority to protect it. Rachel opened the road agreement next. Silver Pines could use one narrow section only during a declared wildfire, flood, or evacuation. No gates. No fees. No commercial activity. One paragraph had been underlined in Dad's handwriting. Any unauthorized obstruction, restriction, or commercial use shall immediately terminate this access privilege. The easement had ended the moment Marjorie built the gate. The county filing would not create that fact. It would only make it impossible to hide. I pressed play on the recorder. Static cracked through the room. Then Dad's tired voice filled the office. "Ethan, if they ever put a gate across our road, they lose every right I gave them." No one spoke. Outside, the excavator struck stone near the creek. Rachel looked at the trust, the map, and the recorder. They built their entire operation on an easement they destroyed themselves. I folded the agreement carefully. Marjorie thought she had stolen every document that could stop her. She had missed the one that made the gate her biggest mistake. I could have closed the road that afternoon. Rachel wanted to file the easement termination, chain the gate, and force Silver Pines off the farm before sunset. The trust gave me authority. The survey maps gave us the boundary. The court order protected the records. But Marjorie had already scheduled her victory celebration. Saturday morning, she planned to unveil the Silver Pines heritage expansion before residents, investors, and county development officials. White tents were being raised beside Dad's barn. Caterers had been hired. A gold ribbon was stretched across the gate. She wanted an audience when she claimed the farm. I wanted the same audience when she lost it. For 4 days, I let the excavator keep moving soil. I let workers spread fresh gravel across the pasture and hang lanterns inside the barn. Every invoice, camera recording, and paid reservation became proof that Silver Pines was operating a business on land it did not own. Rachel recorded a formal notice confirming the easement had terminated the moment Marjorie built the gate and began collecting fees. By Tuesday afternoon, the notice sat in the county records beside the original agreement. Marjorie could still lie. She could no longer pretend she had never been warned. Graham Holt arrived Wednesday with a survey truck, 2 tripods, and a folder of historic plats. He had spent 30 years resolving mountain boundary disputes and spoke about property lines the way surgeons spoke about arteries. He studied the crushed marker near the gate. Then he checked the original coordinates. The booth is 16 feet inside the Caldwell parcel, he said. And the gate? 10 feet. The sign too. He tapped the map. They built an entire checkpoint on the property of the man they barred from entering. Dr. Samuel Reed sent Rachel Franklin's medical records in a sworn statement. Dad remained mentally competent, but his right hand had been severely weakened after the stroke. The signature on Marjorie's authorization showed speed, pressure, and movement he could not physically produce on the recorded date. The notarial certificate created another problem. It claimed Dad personally acknowledged the document at the farmhouse 2 days after he had been admitted to Blue Ridge Rehabilitation Center. The center's records showed he never left the facility. By Thursday, Rachel had delivered the videos, financial records, and medical evidence to the county's Vulnerable Adult Investigation Unit. The unauthorized writing fees alone exceeded $50,000. The drainage trench triggered a separate stop work order. The marked hardwoods brought in environmental enforcement. The missing files brought investigators. Owen contacted me from a prepaid number late Thursday night. They're moving more boxes tomorrow, he whispered. Where? Marjorie's real estate office. Can you keep the cameras running? A pause. Yes. That's all I need. Friday morning, the judge signed an expanded preservation order. Silver Pines was forbidden from deleting recordings, transferring documents, removing equipment, or altering the disputed property. Investigators received authority to secure any records connected to Dad's farm. Marjorie knew none of this. She thought the silence meant I had surrendered. That afternoon, Rachel used the durable healthcare power of attorney and the court's protective order to arrange a private video call with Dad. His face appeared on the screen. Pale, thinner, angry. Ethan, he said. For 3 weeks, other people had spoken in his name. They said he feared me. They said he wanted me gone. They said he had handed his farm to Silver Pines. I had prepared questions. None of them mattered. Did you ban me? I asked. Dad's left hand tightened around the blanket. Bring me home. I will. But first, I need you at a meeting tomorrow. A tired smile moved across his face. Is Marjorie going to be there? Yes. Good. At sunset, I parked on the western ridge and watched Silver Pines rehearse its celebration. Music drifted from the barn. White tents glowed beneath strings of lights. Marjorie stood near the gate directing workers with a glass of wine in one hand. Clint tested the lock twice. Dad's brass key still hung from his belt. My phone vibrated. Rachel had sent one sentence. Everything is signed. I looked at the red exclusion order on my dashboard. Tomorrow, Marjorie would tell an entire community that Caldwell Hollow Farm belonged to Silver Pines. I was going to let her finish. Then I was going to show them where the property line really stood. Marjorie raised the gold scissors just as my truck stopped outside the gate. The string quartet missed a note. Every face beneath the white tents turned toward me. Caldwell Hollow Farm had been dressed for someone else's victory. Champagne glasses flashed in the morning sun. Horses shifted inside polished stalls. A banner stretched across Dad's barn. Silver Pines Heritage Expansion. Marjorie stood behind the ribbon in an ivory suit, smiling for 3 cameras. Clint reached my door before I opened it. You're still banned. I placed the red exclusion order on the hood. I know. Rachel stepped from the passenger side carrying a black case. Behind us, Graham Holt's survey truck rolled onto the shoulder. A county inspection vehicle followed, then 2 unmarked cars from the Vulnerable Adult Investigation Unit. Marjorie's smile disappeared. "What is this?" Graham lifted his tripod from the truck. "A boundary survey. We already have surveys. Not accurate ones." He positioned the instrument beside the crushed orange marker. The laser clicked softly while residents gathered near the gate. Clint watched the numbers on Graham's screen as though they might change if he stared hard enough. They did not. Graham walked 10 feet past the ribbon and drove a new stake into the gravel. Then he placed another beside the security booth. "This gate," he said, "is entirely inside the Caldwell parcel." A murmur moved through the crowd. Marjorie laughed once. "That is impossible. Silver Pines has legal access." Rachel opened her case and removed the original easement. "Emergency access," she said. "Limited to declared wildfire, flood, or evacuation." She turned the document toward the board members. "No gates. No fees. No commercial activity. Any violation terminates the privilege immediately." Marjorie's jaw tightened. "That agreement is outdated." "It is recorded," Rachel said. "And your access ended the day you built this checkpoint." A county inspector stepped forward and attached a red stop work notice to the gate. Clint reached for his radio. One of the investigators raised a hand. "Leave it where it is." The crowd went silent. Owen walked out of the booth. His face looked pale, but his steps were steady. He handed an investigator a memory drive. "This contains the original security archive." Marjorie turned toward him. "You are fired." "No," the investigator said. "He is a protected witness." Rachel placed a portable monitor on the hood of my truck. The first video began playing. Midnight. Marjorie's SUV entering the farm. Clint unlocking Dad's office. The brass key with green tape passing from his hand to hers. Then both of them returning with the metal document box. Someone in the crowd gasped. Martha's photograph appeared next. Then Dad's medical records. Rachel held up the forged authorization. The notarial certificate claims Franklin Caldwell personally signed this at the farmhouse 2 days after he entered rehabilitation. She placed Dr. Reed's sworn statement beside it. Hospital records prove he never left the facility. His right hand also lacked the strength and coordination required to produce this signature. Marjorie looked toward the board. No one moved closer to her. "You don't understand," she said. Franklin approved the expansion. Rachel turned the monitor toward the crowd. Dad appeared on the screen from his rehabilitation room. His face was tired. His left hand rested on the blanket. His voice was weak. It was still his. "I never banned my son." The words crossed the pasture like a gunshot. Marjorie stepped backward. "This community cannot be controlled by one family's history." I picked up the original trust and walked past the new boundary stake. "No," I said, "but it can be stopped by recorded ownership." The lead investigator asked Marjorie to surrender her folder and phone. Another officer removed Dad's brass key from Clint's belt. Inspectors sealed the barn while investigators entered the booth to secure its records. The gold scissors slipped from Marjorie's hand and struck the gravel. I lifted the red exclusion order from my hood. Then I walked beneath the ribbon without touching it. For the first time in 3 weeks, no one tried to stop me. 3 weeks later, Dad rang the dinner bell again. 2 hard pulls. 1 short. The sound rolled across Caldwell Hollow Farm just before sunset, bright and clean above the rustle of pasture grass. Franklin stood beneath the porch roof with his left hand wrapped around the rope. He was thinner than before the stroke, and a cane carried most of his weight, but his eyes were still sharp. "Wash your hands," he called. "Supper's getting cold." For 1 second, I was 15 again. My boots crunched across the same gravel I had walked as a boy. The steel HOA gate was gone. So was the security booth. County crews had removed both after Graham's survey confirmed they were built inside our boundary. For pale concrete scars remained beside the road. Dad stared at them as I reached the porch. "Ugly thing," he said. "The gate. The arrogance." I laughed harder than I expected. The investigation did not end the day Marjorie dropped those gold scissors. It only began. Over the next 6 months, every part of her operation came apart. The district attorney's office charged her with document fraud, unlawful conversion of property, and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Investigators found more than $50,000 in writing fees and preserve assessments routed through accounts connected to her real estate company. The notary admitted Marjorie had delivered the authorization already signed. Franklin had never appeared before her. Clint Barron surrendered Dad's brass key and lost his private security license. He claimed he had only followed orders, but the camera archive showed him entering the office, carrying out records, breaking the survey marker, and signing towing papers after learning I was acting co-trustee. Owen testified before the grand jury. He lost his job at Silver Pines, but Rachel helped him find work with the county parks department. The last time I saw him, he was repairing trail signs instead of guarding stolen land. Silver Pines elected a new board within 2 months. The equestrian club closed. The event tents disappeared. The cameras came down, and the drainage trench was filled under county supervision. Not one of the marked walnut or oak trees was cut. A court-appointed receiver traced the unauthorized fees and began returning them to the families who had paid. The new HOA board asked Dad to restore the emergency road agreement. He agreed, but only after Rachel rewrote every condition in plain English. Emergency use only. No gates. No fees. No security control. No claim of ownership. Dad made each board member initial every line. When the new president apologized for what Silver Pines had allowed, Dad listened without interrupting. Then he tapped the agreement with one crooked finger. Permission, he said, is not possession. We found the missing brass dinner bell in a storage unit rented through Marjorie's real estate office. It sat beside Dad's document box, 3 cartons of HOA financial records, and the old wooden Silver Pines sign from the gate. I rehung the bell beneath the porch. I kept the red exclusion order. Dad watched me place it inside a dark oak frame in the farm office. Beneath it, I mounted the brass key with its strip of green tape. You decorating with lies now? He asked. No. I stepped back and looked at both pieces together. I want people to remember what happens when permission starts pretending to be ownership. Dad studied the display for a long moment. Then he nodded. Outside, evening light spread across the western field. The red maple moved gently above the place where we had scattered Mom's ashes. Cattle pushed through the grass, and the creek ran clear again, free of machines, cameras, and HOA signs. Marjorie had told an entire community that Dad feared me, that I wanted to sell his farm, that my own father had banned me from the land where he raised me. In the end, every lie she created became another piece of evidence against her. They banned me from my father's farm. But when their gate finally came down, everyone saw who had never belonged there.